Whether you're knee-deep in the heart of March Madness, excited about the pending baseball season, or elated and circled your calendar for the NFL's version of Christmas in April with the upcoming NFL Draft, there's certainly a lot of activities which are competing for your attention as a sports fan these days. I spent some time this week with Joseph Calabrese and Nicholas Durst, the hosts of You Know I'm Right, a podcast dedicated to covering every hot topic in the world of sports. The gentlemen joined me this week to discuss some of the hot button issues in the sports landscape as we turn the calendar to spring. Let's engage in this engaging and spirited roundtable dedicated to sports. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Our discussion began by discussing the unpredictable nature of this year's NCAA men's basketball tournament and the future and vitality of baseball. Hey, gentlemen, when we look at the Final Four, obviously, Baylor or Gonzaga is going to be the favorite to get to the championship game. But I'm wondering if we can start today's discussion by discussing the unorthodox nature of this tournament and what you guys think about it.
Yeah, sure. Would you like me to go first here?
Sure. If you want to be the trendsetter, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the first 2 weeks dominated by upsets. Particularly strange because I thought a lot of the teams this year were much stronger in recent years, especially the Big Ten teams. We saw Illinois lose to Loyola. We saw Iowa lose to Oregon. And then we saw Texas lose to Abilene Christian in the first round. So I do think that the nature of how this tournament had to be put together with the delays and the scheduling and kind of trying to shuffle through matchups here a little bit because of what was happening with COVID definitely played a factor into this. But I also do think that, especially in the case of the Big Ten, they play a really tough schedule, and all those teams are good, and they beat up on each other usually during the regular season. So what you see here now is, so you mentioned Gonzaga and Baylor are definitely the two favorites. They're the two best teams, I believe, in the country. And the other two teams are UCLA and Houston. Houston and Gonzaga are two dominant programs who play in mid-major conferences, while Baylor is one of the best teams in the Big 12 and the UCLA is one of the lower tier teams in the Pac-12. But what you're seeing now is something that would never happen in college football, where I think the power conference teams over the course of the regular season now are starting to beat up on each other just a little bit more and a little bit more. Factor in that they have to play a conference tournament, which does kind of the similar things, and you're seeing the way the tournament usually plays out now, and you're seeing a lot more double-digit teams win, a lot more upsets. You're seeing a lot more teams in that 7 range, that 9 range, that 10 range, that 11 range. I mean, now UCLA is the 4th 11 seed, I believe, to reach the Final Four. So I think that plays a huge factor into it as well.
Nick, did you want to chime in here, bud?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed that Rutgers isn't in the Final Four. I think they got horrible play calling at the end of their game, but it was an okay tournament. But I think Gonzaga needs to win. I mean, they've been a great team for 18 years now. They never even won a championship, and it would be great to see them go undefeated. So that's what I'm hoping for here. Gonzaga versus Baylor, the two best teams. Let's see it happen. Was hoping Michigan was gonna pull it off against UCLA last night. Just wasn't in the cards, and we shall see. But I think Joe would agree. I think we need to see Gonzaga win.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just agreeing with Nick. I think so. Gonzaga's head coach Mark Few is one of the best head coaches in college basketball. Gonzaga made the national championship game 4 years ago when they played North Carolina and lost. And Gonzaga is just a perennial program that's always in the top 5 and the top 10. They're really, really good. I think having an undefeated team in a story like that would be really great for college basketball. So I wholeheartedly agree with Nick.
Well, we always like to see the battle for perfection. It doesn't happen very often, so it'll be certainly interesting to see. But I think when we look at the tournament as a whole, I think not having fans and not having the ambiance of the usual tournament, I think gives you a greater appreciation for the sport. So I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on not having the regular tournament in terms of like the ambiance of it and how that has played out throughout the course of the tournament. Nick, you can go first, bud, because Joe went.
I love it because the NCAA can't be making this extra money and then not paying it to the athletes. They're able to, those people in the stands. It's great. They're not making their money because the NCAA is just a scam. I mean, it's an absolute joke. So, sure, it's different. There's no fans in the stands, but, this is what they get. This is what they deserve, Joe.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to at least we've seen some scenery in terms of having like last night when UCLA was playing, Mitch Cronin, the head coach of UCLA, the camera kept panning to his father in the stands, and that was a really cool moment. And we have seen some people and some family, but you're definitely right. A lot of what makes a tournament special is stuff like the crowd reaction. It's the stuff like seeing the kids in the stands and like the bands playing and stuff like that. And it's also that kind of stuff that makes like those one shining moments at the end, really special. So definitely agree with Nick here. Again, the NCAA did themselves in here. I believe that we could have had a little more people there gathering together in a very safe manner, something that I think would have given probably a little more boost to the kids as well, because as you know, they were able to get through the regular season this year with everything happening in the world, with COVID happening in the world. I think those kids and those student athletes, their reward should have been the NCAA kind of getting this together a little more cohesively, and obviously don't want to say rewarding them, but I definitely think you're right. The ambiance here, a little of that feel that makes the tournament special. Definitely not with this tournament as it has been in the past. But all circumstances considering, I think what they've able to accomplish here up until this point has still been solid. I think the tournament itself, a lot of the games have been very good, but you're right. A lot of the extra stuff is just, it's not there this year.
Hey, before we move on from the tournament, I'm just curious to get your thoughts on who you think is going to win the whole thing. Joe, you can go first.
I do think it's going to be Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is going to beat UCLA. I think that's going to be a fairly one-sided game. I think UCLA has played well, but that'll be pretty one-sided. Baylor and Houston is going to be a very good game. But at the end of the day, I think Baylor will beat Houston, and I think Gonzaga will defeat Baylor, complete the undefeated season, and win the national championship.
I agree. I think Gonzaga's gonna win, but they've been the best team all year. Maybe they were the best team last year, so well deserved.
Gentlemen, as you know, we're right on the precipice of the start of the baseball season, and going back to last year, there's no love lost between the MLB Players Association and the owners. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you think the pending labor dispute will affect the season.
I don't know if it's going to necessarily affect this season, other than maybe we see a few more in-season contract extensions because people want to secure their money. But yeah, I think we're definitely going to have either no season next year or a shortened season, unfortunately, because there's going to be a lockout or a strike. And then after that, free agency is going to be a mystery because there's not enough money as is with COVID. And now you have all these big time free agents hitting the market. They're going to have crazy expectations. Like Francisco Lindor, I think he's going to get a 12-year deal worth $285 million. It's not going to happen most likely. Everyone's going to take a loss again this season, other than the Rangers who could go 100% occupancy. So it's going to be crazy. They're going to be fighting over the DH arbitration years. Not looking forward to it, but I think it's a necessary evil here to move the game forward here. I think we're going to end up seeing the players are going to ask for only 4 years of team control out of 5, and to get rid of that the Chris Bryant rule where we'll hold you down for 2 weeks and then you could get called up after that and we save a year. They're going to try to get rid of that. And in exchange for that, maybe they have to give a little, and we unfortunately might see expanded playoffs as a full-time thing. And we'll see what happens with the DH here. I think I would like to see expanded regular season rosters at least. I know they gave a 26-man, but I would say a 27, 28-man roster, they should go about doing that. Or you do something where you can only, have X amount of pitchers active. So, your 4 other starters, you make them inactive each day. And that's the way I would go about constructing these rosters here, and it allowed teams more flexibility off the bench, and then to maybe carry a third catcher.
So I work as a freelance employee for MLB. I do freelance media management, and I work for MLB.com. So
be careful what you say.
Careful what I say here. So while I can't say too much, I will piggyback off of Nick's point. And I will say that what we saw from Major League Baseball last year, how they were tweaking the rules and how they were kind of adjusting the game on the fly to adjust and accommodate the players, and that shortened schedule and that COVID schedule, a lot of the concepts that you have seen, I believe, are going to be major talking points in terms of rule changes for the upcoming CBA. So the stuff that you see with the 3-batter minimum, which is for a pitcher now, the universal DH, which I think in terms of people who support and are against the universal DH, I think it's just very classic. People who grew up with American League style baseball and people who grew up with National League style baseball. I am a Yankees fan. Nick is a Mets fan. I support the universal DH. That is my opinion. Nick loves the strategy part of the game, loves the double switch, loves manager decisions.
Bunting.
Loves all that.
Pitchers hitting home runs. I think you like that too. You like when a pitcher goes deep.
Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't like when a pitcher goes deep? But again, so the CBA will focus a lot on rule changes, and I think a lot of that will need input from the players. And I also think the salary structures and how a lot of these players are coming up, I think that will probably be changed as well, because we're seeing a scenario here where in recent months we've seen players like Fernando Tatis Jr. get a contract, Ronald Acuna got a contract extension last year. Juan Soto for the Washington Nationals. He's a star in that similar kind of class of players. You're seeing younger stars get paid. A lot of other young players would like to see money sooner in their careers. That is going to be a point that is brought up when Major League Baseball and the Players Association negotiate the CBA as well. So again, it's like I said, I can't speak too much, but I can at least go over what they're talking about.
And we'll also find out about, if it's going to be permanent 7-inning doubleheaders and the runner on second to start the 10th, which I hate. I hate both of those. Kevin, you like those rules?
No, I liked the pure nature of baseball. So until you win, I'm a traditionalist when it comes to sports. I realize the need for a change and advancement sometimes, but I'm a traditionalist when it comes to sports. But I also wanted to ask you guys about the importance of trying to appeal to a broader audience when it comes to baseball, because to be perfectly honest, baseball is well behind the three other major sports in terms of popularity amongst the masses. So my question to you guys is, how do you think we get baseball more popular against a younger demographic?
So, as somebody who has watched and studied the game for a really long time, and somebody who works for the league now, again, can't speak too much about this, but what I will say is, with the increase in the amount of home runs that I see, I think you're seeing a lot of plays that could be made in the field, whether it's in the infield, whether it's in the outfield. You're seeing a lot of opportunities for some players to showcase their overall talent, maybe some more athleticism. A lot of those exciting games, and this goes for pitchers too. A lot of those potentially in-game exciting moments, but with the increase in the home run and with the increase in the percentage of runs across the league that come from the home run, I think you need to figure out a way to look at what you have in terms of the players that you're seeing across all 30 teams in Major League Baseball, have a real conversation about the skill sets that these players have. And if you're going to try to cut into the I wouldn't say advantages, but if you're looking to catch up a little bit with how the NBA has surpassed, with how the NFL, I also work for the National Hockey League. So to me, the game on skates is always exciting to me. But I think the name of the game here is to showcase your players in a way that appeals to especially younger demographics of people. And I don't want younger kids and younger demographics and other types of youth. I don't want those kids to watch baseball, to look at the game and say, this is not for me, and then look elsewhere. So that would be my stance on this. Again, like I said, I can't speak too much on it. I love baseball. I love the game. To me, it's still the game that I grew up loving. But in terms of not letting other leagues pass you, what you have to do is you have to make the game appealing to not only people who grew up watching the game and love it, like Nick and I, but you need to make that 7-year-old kid who is starting to understand sports and is starting to play games with his friends in the schoolyard or at the park or wherever you go. That kid, I want that kid to think like, wow, baseball is cool. I want to play baseball.
Listen, I think they need to get rid of the shift, and the game will be a lot. Because right now, people turn to like, how many times am I going to watch this guy ground out to the second baseman? It's boring. Yeah, that's taking away the actual fun of the game. Let's get people stealing bases. I mean, that's exciting. People want to see that. I know what they got to market the stars. All you hear about is like Juan Soto, right? Or Tatis. The two best players in the game are Jacob deGrom and Mike Trout. You barely see them on commercials or anything. If this was the NFL, like Peyton Manning syndrome, they'd have them on every single commercial, and you know the guy's name. So, like a good neighbor, maybe we can get Mike Trout in a State Farm commercial or something like that. That's the way they got to go about doing things, Kevin.
Yeah, I think if you want people to get more interested in the sport, I think you're right, Nick, about being marketable to stars. And Joe, I do think you're right in terms of finding a way to appeal to a younger demographic at an earlier age so that they can get passionate about the sport as well. But I wanted to move on to the NFL ratifying a 17-game season and what you guys think about the extra game. Obviously, it's a revenue grab for the league as well. But I'm wondering what you think about the extra game and the expanded playoffs.
I think it's funny how Roger Goodell could go up there yesterday and say, "Oh, we're following the science, which says it's safer to play an extra regular season game rather than an extra preseason game. Same amount of games, but these games are going to matter now. Ultimately, we're going to end up seeing the Super Bowl pushed back to the day before President's Day, which I'm sure my buddy here, my co-host of the You Know I'm Right podcast on In the Zone, would love to have that Super Bowl the day before President's Day, so you can just relax the next day. But it's obviously a money grab. You said it, and the players aren't happy about it. It's going to be hard to adjust. We're so used to saying, "Oh, this team could be 500." Nobody can be 500 anymore. No more 7-9. No more 9-7s. It's 9-8. So 8-9. So it's going to be interesting. Doesn't bode well for a team like the Jets, who has to play an extra game. And it's really bizarre that how do you determine which, now everybody's going to have an uneven amount of home games versus away games because it's not even split. And I read that every 8 years, your team will at least play one international game in Canada, Mexico, or Europe. As of now, the plans. I hate the international games. I don't want to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday to watch the football game in Europe. It just, let it be home. I don't like that, but again, it's a money grab, like you said. So that's why they're going to get this huge TV contract. And we got to deal with it. And you know what? In 20 years, it's going to be an 18-game schedule. Or at some point, it's going to be an 18-game schedule. So at some point, you got to ask yourself, when is enough enough? But, the ratings are going to be incredible. And this is what the networks want, an extra week here. And, of course, now every team's going to get two weeks of a bye week throughout the season. And, we have one less preseason game to worry about.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off Nick here again. The fact that you can't go 500 anymore for the foreseeable future because eventually there will be an 18th game, to me, that drives me up a wall. You know what I mean? Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to add the extra game, you should add 2 extra games and then just either cut the preseason out entirely or give every team the option of saying, listen, you have one available optional preseason game that you can schedule in addition to as many organization scrimmages as you want up until the point to prepare for the regular season. And then you should do it that way because, again, this is a money grab. It's one extra game. But the imbalance of home and away games to me doesn't make sense. If you're going to add the one extra game, you might as well add the second extra game. So I feel like that's just I don't know. I feel like that's coming within 10 years anyway here. So I feel like it's not even worth going on and on about. In terms of the international game, well, I do agree with Nick in the sense that you don't want to wake up at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, especially when you wake up, that early for people, during the week when they go to work. I think the game itself is so popular here and that there's still ways to grow it internationally. I had a roommate in college who lived right outside of London. And in terms of football, he watches like the world's football. Like he's a huge Chelsea fan, right? But I remember he was so well versed and knowledgeable when it came to the NFL. And I was thinking to myself, like, how is that possible? Like, you follow up on the game, and he goes, absolutely. Like, the NFL is so popular in the UK. And, it took me back a little bit, because I was saying to myself, wow, is it really that popular? And then you watch the games in Mexico City, and you watch the games on that terrible turf field, and those games are still popular. I remember they experimented a couple years with the Buffalo Bills home games, where they were playing games in Toronto, and those games.
Canada, I think Canada, it makes sense to go there because
right.
Why can't you have an NFL team in Canada, right? Like
Absolutely.
Montreal, whatever, Toronto. So that makes sense. But Joe and I discussed this on our show. I'm right, which you can check out at inthezone.io or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, or at Joey Cals on Instagram, or Calabrese 1 on Twitter, and I'm at Nick_Durst. We said, like, when we're doing our shows during the football season, it wouldn't surprise us if the NFL tries to figure some out. So every Sunday we have a game at 9 a.m. So 9 to 12. You get the pregame shows, 1 to 4, 4 to 7, and an 8 to 11. So full day of football. Eventually that's going to come. We also said, maybe we're going to see like a Tuesday night package or something, right? Didn't happen yet. Doesn't mean they can't finagle it in there at some point, because this year we had football basically every day of the week, and it was good. And I think that's what the networks want. That's what the NFL wants. Doesn't mean that's what the players want, though.
Yeah, that'll lead into my next question. In terms of playing all of these games in a span of a week, do you guys think it dilutes the best product the league can put onto the field?
I mean, it's interesting because on one hand, a lot of people would be kind of against having games every day, or like trying to schedule games for every day. But I remember those Tuesday night games that we had during the season this year were awesome. Like that Tennessee Buffalo game that was on a Tuesday night was great.
Right. And now with every team having 2 bye weeks, why can't you play your Tuesday or Wednesday game and then be on the bye week? Next week, have the bye week before.
Yeah, I think staggering the games a little bit in terms of something like, I don't want to see a team play on Sunday and then see a team immediately play on Thursday. Like that, I can't stand that.
Right. They should play Thursday, and then they should play Thursday or a bye week, and the next week you could play a Tuesday game or something like that.
Absolutely. I agree with Nick there.
Yeah, guys, you're being broadcast today in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, which is the city right across the river from Detroit. So I have to ask the Matthew Stafford trade question, and what you guys thought of the package the Lions got in return, and the direction the team is going as well.
Watch out for your kneecaps if you're playing the Detroit Lions.
Well, I'll put my protective braces on. How about that?
Listen, I think the Lions, I'll use a word Joe likes to use on our podcast, Mike, fleeced the Rams. I mean, all these picks, you get Jared Goff. If you don't like him after 2 years, you can go ahead and cut him. You're probably going to be horrendous this year, be the top pick in the draft next year. You can draft a quarterback if you want. Maybe it works out with Goff. And the Rams, they get Stafford. This guy's done nothing but lose in his career. If you're a Lions fan, you know this. So the guy's never won a playoff game. So, I think it's a win for the Lions here in the long term, but it's going to take a long time to rebuild that Lions franchise. And I think the lingo they use around Detroit is the Lions have been rebuilding since 1950. So I don't know if there's bright days ahead, but getting that big package for Stafford, who's pretty much done in my opinion, I think that was a good move by the Lions.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, the tagline around these parts is "Embrace the Rebuild" with all 4 major sports teams here in Detroit. And I think the Lions are the furthest from competing, and they haven't won since 1957, before the Fords owned the team. So, but I do think they're going in an interesting direction. Whether it'll work or not, I have absolutely no idea. But at least they're being more transparent, and I don't have to look at Matt Patricia with this puzzled look on the sidelines anymore. So that makes me happy as a Lions fan.
Yeah, I think in the immediate, I think for the next year or two, it makes the Rams a very interesting team because I don't think
I
Stafford.
hope they lose every game. No, I'm kidding.
No, I don't think Stafford ever played with a team that was ever really truly a contender, and even then, he was still able to get to the playoffs 3 times, which to me, with the Lions organization, that it was a win in itself. So for the next 2 years, I think the Rams are very intriguing with that defense and Stafford because I do think he is an upgrade on Goff. Is he a significant upgrade? I don't think so, but I do think he's an upgrade. So personally speaking, I dated a girl from Michigan for about 3 years. So all the Michigan teams to me feel like my secondary teams right now. The Red Wings, the Lions, right?
Tigers.
I want to see the Lions turn the corner. Like we've seen the last year or so, what happens, especially like with the Cleveland Browns, when even if Baker Mayfield's not a great quarterback, even if that like roster is not like the best, like you see winning games and you kind of see what stability does, and it gives a huge jolt. I'm always seeing the Lions on Thanksgiving. I'm seeing like you guys are very passionate. You guys are always supporting your team. I want to see.
I want to see the Lions win on Thanksgiving once.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a while.
We've seen the win. We've seen like 2 or 3 wins on Thanksgiving, but for the most part, yeah.
So, Joe, if you had to rank the Detroit sports teams from most likely to win a championship to least, what would you do for the 4 teams?
That's a good.
I mean, it's crazy how far the Pistons have fallen. I think I'd have to probably go Red Wings #1,
right?
Tigers #2, and then it's really. I guess I'd have to go Lions and then Pistons. That would be my order.
All right, I would switch. I would switch the Tigers and the Lions because I think it's easier to kind of do like a 2-year turnaround in the NFL.
Spencer Torkelson's going to be
yeah. I mean, we saw
tremendous.
Miami was terrible 2 years ago. They were pretty good this year. Cleveland they didn't win a game 3 years ago, and then they were in the second round this year. So I think the turnaround for the NFL and football teams are a lot quicker. So I would go with the Red Wings, the Lions, Tigers, and then the Pistons. The Pistons, unfortunately, I don't think they're in a place you want to be. I think they're the furthest off.
Well, I'll second that. I think the Pistons, in terms of their ownership, was kind of all over the place. Getting Blake Griffin at the end of his career and paying him all that money to essentially sit on the bench and do nothing. And while he provided veteran leadership in terms of pouring the foundation for Dwayne Casey to try and integrate these veterans, I do think the hiring of Troy Weaver was a good move, but I do agree with you. They have a lot of young assets, but I'm not sure if they have a clear and verified direction of where they want to go.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. And as somebody who's a Knicks fan, considering that their last playoff appearance was in 12-13, they haven't been great for years. With now Coach Tom Thibodeau and some of the guys that they have, Julius Randle becoming an all-star, we're finally seeing them turn the corner. So Nick and I, we feel your pain, but if the Knicks have finally looked like here that they're starting to figure out, there's no reason why the Pistons can't.
If the Pistons would have just drafted Carmelo Anthony over Darko Milicic, the Pistons would have had like at least 3 or 4 titles with that great team.
Well, amazing what confidence in the front office will do for you. I was saddled with both Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia and Matt Millen all in the span of my lifetime, and I'm surprised I still have a heartbeat as a Lions fan. But that's Another story for another day. And another topic on my list was the NFL draft. Obviously, they're going to try and do it in Cleveland this year. No more Roger Goodell's basement, so we can watch the draft in his basement. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you think about the composition of the draft, how you think the trade that we saw about a week and a half ago will impact it as well.
So I think the trades tell you that the 49ers are going to pick a quarterback, and they're going to try to, have Jimmy Garoppolo start for a year, and they're going to try to Patrick Mahomes it, or the quarterback that draft is the bench. But yeah, you got to be careful there. You're giving up those assets to move up to 3. You better make sure you pick your guy, because if it doesn't work out in 3 years, Lynch and Shanahan, they're both gone. I think Shanahan, by the way, is overrated as a coach. But that's the one thing there. The Dolphins, they're probably going to pick Sewell if he's there, if the Bengals for some reason don't pick him. Or they'll maybe probably pick Devontae Smith to reunite him with Tua. And that's why they move back up in the draft. And then the Eagles, who the heck knows what they're doing? They're at 12, but I don't think they have a clue what they're trying to do. Still waiting for them to get Nick Foles back in there. But that's what I think with the draft there. Obviously, Lawrence picked first. Unfortunately for Zach Wilson, looks like he's going to be a Jet, so his career is over before it even starts. And that's just where it's at. I really think beyond Lawrence and Wilson, there aren't any major future star quarterbacks in this draft. I think Fields is a tremendous leap down. Kellen Mond, interesting, from Texas A&M. Trey Lance, he didn't even play last year for North Dakota State. Their season was canceled. And Mac Jones, he's getting a lot of hype right now, but none of those guys are even close to the Wilson and Trevor Lawrence level of potential in this draft.
Yeah, it seems like it goes the same every year now. It's always that team that trades up that gets into the top 3 or 4 to get the quarterback. It always seems like we get 3 quarterbacks going in the top 5, 4 in the top 10 to 15-ish. So the draft has become very quarterback central, even though we've seen in recent years, it's not really necessarily a guarantee anymore. Jameis Winston, not with the team that drafted him. Marcus Mariota, not with the team that drafted him. Carson Wentz, not with the team that drafted him. Jared Goff.
By the way, Mariota, he should ask. Mariota should ask for release, because he's better than at least 15 starting quarterbacks right now in the league. And he's stuck backing up Derek Carr, and he took a pay cut. You don't think Bill Belichick would have wanted him? Or he could have started for the Giants. But what's going to be funny with the Jets is they'll be a history. The first time ever that they have 2 quarterbacks drafted in the top 4 within 5 years on the same roster. Because Sam Darnold, nobody's going to want him unless you want to dump him for a 7th-round pick.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they get for Darnold. So I feel your pain. You're a Lions fan. I'm a Jets fan. I get it. I feel it. So Nick is always making fun of me and always making fun of the Jets and Darnold. But, I mean, he's got a point there. I mean, you take Zach Wilson. What are you going to do with both guys on the roster? The best case scenario for the Jets is that they find the situation with the Cardinals that did a couple years ago when they were in a position to take Kyler Murray, and they were able to end up finding a taker for Josh Rosen. And, unfortunately, Rosen just hasn't materialized anywhere. I think it's due to kind of lack of opportunity, not really a great situation, and maybe him not being that good anyway. So to follow up, the 49ers moved up. They're going to take a quarterback. I was going through my point, like we go through all these quarterbacks who were taken the top of the draft in the last 3, 4, 5 years or so. A lot of them don't even end up staying on the team with the drafted them, right? So it'll be intriguing, because I think there are going to be a lot of quarterbacks, but like 7 or 8 of them I think taken in the top 2 or 3 rounds this year. It always seems like we're always talking about quarterbacks. There's other players in the draft too that I think will stand out. I think this is going to be an immaculate class in terms of receivers. I think this is one of the best receiver drafts in terms of raw talent coming out of the college level in a long time. One of those potential all-time classes, as good as that Odell Beckham class and Odell Beckham, another guy, not with his first team. So yeah, I'm always excited for the draft. I like doing it on location. I have a friend who used to work for NFL.com, NFL Network, do the NFL podcast and stuff. A couple years ago, when the NFL draft was in Nashville, he got to go with his co-hosts and his whole team there, and they closed down Broadway, and they had that whole strip with the stage and everything. And I think by far that was one of the best sceneries that we've ever seen for the draft. A lot of people liked having the draft when it was in Dallas at the AT&T Stadium, Jerry Jones's baby. But the Nashville scene on the street with all those people there, I mean, that's what I think it's about. I think if you're going to do on-site like NFL drafts, that is what you should be shooting for. And obviously we can't do that yet because, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. But I'm happy that we're not going to have to see it from Roger Goodell's basement. You're 100% right there. I'm hoping by next year we have people again, and we kind of go back to some sort of resemblance of normalcy. But yeah, I mean, I'm always excited for the draft.
Yeah, I've got two more topics on my list, but just before we get to those, I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on what the Lions will do in the draft, because I know they're at 7 now, and if we have the run on quarterbacks, and assuming they don't draft one, which getting Goff now, I don't think they will. But what worries me is they'll fall in love with a wide receiver, but then again, they really don't have any difference makers at that position. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you think Detroit's going to do at 7, guys.
Listen, I think, well, first of all, if they can't pull the draft in Cleveland, they should just do it at the WWE Thunderdome. I think that's the best bet there. But I think the Lions are going to probably try to get Jamar Chase from LSU if he's there. I think that'd be a good pick for them. They need a lot of stuff, but if you can get a star wide receiver, maybe hope him and Goff can hook up, and maybe the offense is pretty decent then if they're able to do that.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably at this point kind of sick of the flashy pick. I remember there was that stretch where the Lions always used to take wide receivers, and obviously Megatron ended up being one of the best in NFL history. But even then, it never really did any good for the franchise. I think if you really want to change the direction, shift the sales here and kind of move forward into a place where you think you can compete in 2 or 3 years. I don't know if adding Jamar Chase on top of Jared Goff, who might not be there in 2 years, is kind of the best solution here. And with that in mind, I also don't think that taking a quarterback here who, especially after going after Goff and with the amount of money that he makes, I mean, that to me, that also seems like kind of a little bit of a mess here. So I think if one of the tackles there, if Sewell's there, I think that would be a tremendous pick. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be a plug and play, 10 or 12-year guy who you don't have to worry about protecting the blind side of the quarterback. I also like Patrick Surtain in second. I think Nick disagrees with me. He hates cornerbacks going kind of early in the draft, especially if they come from Ohio State.
Ohio State or Alabama, if you're a cornerback or a safety, it's been major red flag.
Hates it. I like Surtain in second, though. I think I don't think that's necessarily a bad pick there because I think the Lions, like you said, they need help everywhere. Getting somebody who could potentially be a number 1 corner, somebody who could be a top-end tackle.
Well, they tried that with Jeff Okudah, and we saw how that worked out.
Right.
Kevin, is Kenny Galladay any good? I think this guy's overhyped. Now he's on the Giants.
Well, I think he got overpaid. That's what I think. I think he's a good receiver. I don't think he's an $18 million a year receiver. And I do think if he didn't get signed by the Giants, I really think he would have had some trouble finding. Certainly,
that's crazy. He's making the same amount of money as Odell Beckham Jr., who's 8 times the athlete and wide receiver he is.
Well, yeah, and I think that the way it ended for him here in Detroit, he kind of zoned out. I think a lot of people zoned out on Matt Patricia just because it went so far south so quickly, but I do think he'll help the Giants. I think he's a good player. That, I don't think he's worth the money he's getting paid though. So. And Nick, I know that we had previously spoken about talking about the role that sport athletes have in sort of lending their voices to societal issues and how the entertainment industry affects that sort of part of the societal discussion. So I'll ask you guys this in terms of sports, race, and societal issues. What do you think the need to hear from sports athletes are when we talk about things or events in the news?
So I am of the opinion that these people have a platform. The LeBron Jameses of the world, these people, whether people out there agree with or disagree with them or not, I think when you're put into that position and you're given a voice, by all means, you should use it, you know, and this goes for everybody. And unfortunately, there are some people out there who kind of abuse the privilege and abuse the platform a little bit. But a lot of these athletes, they come from a position where they don't come from much. They kind of have to rise up a little bit, and in that sense, they always want to give back, right? So when people out there are saying that, oh, they don't like when somebody kneels for the national anthem or something like that, to me, that stuff doesn't bother me. I don't think twice about that. To me, if you're caring about something like that, you know, like get lost, right? But they have a platform. They need to use it. And the leagues, I think, for better or worse, have a responsibility to try to be as fair and as inclusive. And they have an obligation too with the platform that they have. In no way should anybody's vote be suppressed. And a lot of these athletes come from a place where they make it big, and then immediately what they do is they start giving back to their local communities, and they try to figure out ways to build stuff locally and to community build. And to me, we have seen this for decades. This is something that is not new in sports. It happened in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. It's happening today. As far as I'm concerned, like none of that stuff bothers me in any way. I think people need to take a chill pill when they say like, oh, like stick to sports. You listen, you have an option to turn off the channel, and you have an option not to watch, or you have an option not to watch the pregame stuff if you don't want to watch. You have an option not to watch the postgame stuff if you don't want to watch. If there's something that the announcers are talking about in a game that you don't like, you know, you have an option to mute. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, these athletes are put into a position, and I think morally they feel the obligation and they feel a responsibility and a duty to give back. So in that sense, like I wholeheartedly agree with them, and nobody should ever be deterred from doing that in any way.
Kevin, are you looking forward to the Olympics? I mean, I think it could be a very unifying event here for the globe.
Well, I am assuming they play the Olympics. I do think that sports are a good way to create a sense of unity, even when you disagree, because it's something we can all get behind. And certainly in today's world, you can't always say that about every issue. In terms of the Olympics, I would like to see them broaden the number of sports that are eligible. As you guys know, I was born with spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. It just simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. So I would like to see Paralympics get extended, more opportunities for Paralympic women to compete in the Olympics. And as a whole, I do think if you want to appeal to a broader audience, you have to give them the platform to speak their mind, because you give them the platform when you need them to be marketed for your purposes and make the money. But I also think it's incumbent upon the owners and for all major sports to allow their athletes to express their opinions, because as I think it's important, because speaking as a Black man, uh, most Black people who watch sports are influenced by what their athletes think of an issue. So I think by giving them a platform, you're also enhancing conversations as well. So I'm just curious what you guys think of that as well.
Yeah, no, when I watch sports, when I watch these guys play and I watch these guys interact and stuff, I've always seen nothing but love and admiration, and that's kind of my MO in life. And I think for the most part, I would say 90 to 95% of all athletes, because obviously you don't know how these people are in their personal lives, and then unfortunately that's something that we only know in snippets of when they do interviews in the media and like appearances and stuff like that. But when I watch these games, I see nothing but love and admiration that those guys share for each other. So, on a deep personal and maybe spiritual level, who knows? But those guys are very, very closely fighting for each other. I think I'm going to give you a moment here. There was a moment a couple years ago when the Dodgers were taking the stand for the anthem, and I think it was Mookie Betts, right, who took the knee, and it was both his teammates who had their hand on his shoulder, and to me, a lot of people thought that was controversial. I didn't think it was controversial. I think when you talk about unity and you talk about having or showing acts, especially from athletes in a unifying way, I think that's what we need a little bit more of. And I want to answer the part about your, what you grew up with and your condition. And I think the fact that you're doing something like this and you're doing a podcast and you're not afraid to speak your voice, I think that's incredibly inspirational.
Absolutely.
I think it's tremendous. I think the fact that you're doing this, I think you should keep going, because I think if you keep going, you're going to go all the way with it. I think we need more people like you who love sports, who have a true admiration for sports, who want to talk about these topics and these uncomfortable topics and topics that I think directly relate to you more so than anybody that I personally that I've ever encountered. I've only, Nick and I have only done a couple of podcast appearances, granted, but all these issues that you're talking about directly affect you, and I hope it is my hope that not only the leagues but these media companies and other forms of mediums and platforms out there, I hope that people like you, people who actually have a story that's worth hearing, who have an inspirational story, who have an uplifting story, I hope that people like you break through in life. I hope people like you are put up there, who are given an opportunity to get that platform, to get that time to speak out to the world, to share your story, because I do think we also need more people like you in the world of sports and the world of sports media and podcasting and doing stuff like that, like passion work, like Nick and I do.
So yeah, very well said, Joe. Usually in our show, we give our guests last words. So I think if that was our guest and Joe was a guest, then that would be perfect last words. Kevin, we thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it. We enjoyed it. For your loyal listeners out there, check out our show called You Know I'm Right. Check it out, Spotify, YouTube, inthezone.io. And before I go, Kevin, I gotta get your World Series predictions here.
Oh, well, I'm already planning the Tigers parade down Woodward. No, I'm kidding.
There you go.
But
AJ Hinch, he could be awesome. He's done it before. So.
Not this year. But I do think the Dodgers have a good chance of repeating. I think they're the prohibitive favorite. The Yankees, if they can ever stay healthy, may have a good shot of it. But I want to thank you guys for appearing on this show today. Had a really robust discussion about a number of issues. And Joe, I want to thank you for those kind words. And if you guys ever want me to return the favor and to be on your podcast, I'd be happy to accept the invitation. But for now, I'll say goodbye and thank you for being here. It's most appreciated.
Thanks, Kevin. We really appreciate it. And everything Joe said, I agree with him. I echo his sentiments.